Okay. Welcome, everyone, to my next episode of my new podcast series. And I'm covering a very difficult subject for some, which is over suicide. And I'm really honoured to have my lovely friend Sarah with us today. Sarah, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Diane. So my name is Sara M Hegy Ahmed. I'm a PhD. I have my PhD in cancer research, and I'm also a transformational coach. So it's been almost a year now that I'm really building my business, and I help people discover freedom and abundance for themselves in their lives. And that's what I love doing.
And that's love, and that's where Sarah and I have met on a coaching course together. And I've asked Sarah to come along today and help me with this subject because she's very bravely shared with me that this has been a little episode that's happened a couple of times in her life. But as she's been looking into it, the underlining things that we're going to talk about, we're hoping that some of you will be able to think about. And if you're struggling at all with anything, that you get the courage to go and just talk with somebody. And if the first person you speak with is not the right person for you, then don't give up, go and find somebody else to do it. Anyway, let's get on with our conversation with Sarah today. You were talking about the amount of experts that you've been through, Sarah. How did you find the person to help you, and what was the journey for you there?
Yeah, okay. So like to how can I say that, to start that off very powerfully, because you have distinguished something that I always thought of, and I would love to share right now, is just linguistically the definition of help. So help from the dictionary is defined as to give or provide what is necessary to accomplish a task or satisfy a need. Okay, that's what help is. See, oftentimes I think help is underrated. So people would say, yeah, okay, I help you, and that's it. But that's actually not what help is. See, if it doesn't satisfy the necessary, like support system, then it actually is not helping you. So my invitation is, if you think you're just getting some help and it's not working, then I want you to discover for yourself that even linguistically in language, that's not help. So see if you can sit with that. And when you sit with that and when you discover that, then please don't give up on your right to get powerful help. Because true help is what makes you stronger, is what makes you empowered, is what completes you. And that's what I wanted to distinguish. And also, we talked a little bit about this. So support, linguistically, support is to serve as a foundation for. So if someone is supporting you, then it sounds linguistically to me that what you're actually getting is someone to lean back onto. And unless you have that for yourself, then you're not getting support. So don't give up on your right to get supported, because you deserve to get supported if you don't feel well, full stop. Yeah. So I hope that this, like, if you sit with that, I hope you discover something for yourself and get started with that since the beginning of our conversation, or from the beginning of our conversation. Yeah.
We've had a little prior conversation to this, because one of the things that's crossed our path is the term experts when it comes to suicide and people dealing with this difficult subject. And Sarah, you'd actually shared that you'd been to see a couple of therapists and they hadn't actually worked for you. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, of course. So what has happened is how I could see that very clearly happening in my life. So me thinking of suicide is, I first was diagnosed with a burnout. And actually, it wasn't a real diagnosis, but I could start seeing signs as a hyperachiever in life. I could start seeing signs like I couldn't speak publicly as I used to. So words would run out of me, or I would see like a blank canvas in my brain. So usually if I talk to you now, it's not empty inside here, I kind of have what I want to say, but I had a really weird experience of just being blank. And then I would do the same things over and over again, which is I would just work, eat, sleep, and work, eat, sleep. And so that's like a typical what a high achieving professional would do. And then all the way through, then nothing. I didn't get any help. I didn't see the need for help. And then there is one day that something has happened, and I was thinking as if there was a lamp, and this lamp was just switched off entirely. I could not smile or laugh anymore. And when I did, it was a really fake laugh. And it was very weird for me because my friends would identify me as a happy person. And for that shift to change, it changed over months, you know, I didn't notice. But I remember this moment when I was sitting in my bed and I thought, you know what, that's it. Like, there's nothing that lights me up anymore. And then what happened is I just spoke with my friend about it. And then he said, maybe you go to a therapist or to go get diagnosed. Maybe you have depression. I was like, me, depression? No, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Okay. And then I go down to a psychiatrist. Actually, this is where I found the first appointment. And then I sit down and she says, how are you doing? And then I start crying. I was having this pain. I didn't know why, but I was very sad. And then she's like, okay, you have, you just have like depression. I was like, what does that even mean? What do I need? And she's like, no, I cannot help you any further. You have to go to a therapist. And then I was sitting down in my bed that day and I was thinking, what now? Yeah, like I already have enough complexity in my life. What is depression? Okay. And how will I deal with this?
Yeah.
And then, so then that has happened. And I started looking for help. And I would just call out therapists and they would be fully booked for months. And then I found this one where I go to and we sit down and I tell him my experience as a person. And then he says, yeah, like you're in the German society and academia is tough. And German academia is a narcissistic environment. And I'm like, how does that even help me? Yeah, I didn't see any sort of listening in his listening. I would say it was very weird. As a person who was not feeling well, it was a really weird experience. And then I remember he also said, yeah, like I was like, I felt discriminated against sometimes. And then he's like, yeah, well, the people, they look at you like that because, you know, they feel that you're repressed because they have this idea of, that you might be repressed and that's just the way it is. And then again, I was like, why is this even like, where's the power in this for me? Yeah, what's in it for me? So, and then I talked about my struggles communicating with people sometimes. And then he was like, well, yeah, you sound like you're angry at it. You have all this anger. Something that we can definitely work on. And to be honest, I didn't feel angry. I just felt invalidated. Yeah. So, or if I had, if he, so probably he was right. And that's what I would discover later on. There is anger in the background, but it was his assumption of me and not just like, that it wasn't really empowering me to do something different. So, and I remember very clearly that I walked out of this therapist and I thought, you know what, I'm never going to visit this guy again. Like, it was not for me. If that's help, it's not for me. And I resisted taking antidepressants. And then I would just go home. And so I come from Cairo and I would tell my family, you know, I don't feel well. And there's a lot of stigma around depression in the Middle East, obviously. And I mean everywhere, but specifically in the Middle East.
Yeah.
Because, you know, people think that when you get depressed, you just live life as depressed and then you die as depressed or worse. And this is how my family's listening was for me, as I said, I don't feel well. So they kind of were not okay with me not feeling well. And then this just went on like that. And this, until I felt really one day, oh my God, I think I need to take antidepressants because I don't feel well at all. I really don't feel well at all. I remember distinguish that and talking to myself very clearly in my head about that. And I just go home and I tell my mom, and she's like, let's talk to your dad, because obviously, you don't want to listen. People say that when you get on antidepressants, it's like you never get off of them.
There is a fear of that for sure, isn't there?
Yeah. And it's like, it's gonna be with you for life.
Yeah.
I get it.
For sure, but I know that sometimes they might just need that little chemical boost in your brain to help you get on the journey again. Though
Exactly.
ultimately, they are often misdiagnosed when people say they're depressed for what you're exactly talking about and what you've been pushing down inside of you.
Yeah. So just one thing about antidepressants, yes, they have side effects, but if you take them properly, I guess for like a defined period of time, then I think they help. But I have never taken them, so I cannot tell for sure. But pharmacologically, because I studied pharmacy for my bachelor's, yes, of course they help boost your serotonin, but your serotonin boost is not enough to get you out of depression.
No.
Okay, so I went to this therapist in Cairo because people have this thing that, okay, maybe culturally this guy is better, or he can help you better because he has your cultural background, whatever. And I sit for 1.5 hours in the clinic, and it's a really bad clinic, even though this guy is super famous. And it was just a very disempowering place to be. I promise you this. He's an expert in his field that would travel to a foreign country 2 to 3 days per month just to give consultations. And the way he was treating patients in his clinic was not consistent with that at all. So, okay. What? I know.
So your experience really with therapists has not been great.
And then it's like after 1.5 hours, I went to the person who like how a receptionist, and they're like, no, you wait 1 hour more. And you're like, you know what? I'm actually not gonna wait any longer. And that's how it was. And I went out of this clinic and I didn't even see the very famous expert. So, and then I went back to work and I started feeling those episodes of pain in my heart. So when I'm disappointed at something at work that's big, or a problem that's happened in my life, I get this pain. And then I call the psychiatry, like hospitals, the emergency ones, because I was in this situation. I had to work and finish my PhD. Like that was my commitment, but I was not feeling well doing it. And there was all those deadlines and things around. So I would just call and I say, I don't feel well. And my calls weren't going through, like there was no real support or help of any sort that was offered to me in that regard. And fast forward, like a few months later, I stayed like that. So I remember it was a really tough experience and a space to be. And that's when those suicidal thoughts started happening. And then just to tell you the empowering part, then I was in this course, a career course for scientists, and it was given by a career coach. And there was this moment in that course when something is opened up for me. I suddenly saw a future for myself that was not there before.
That's lovely.
Really, it wasn't there.
Yeah. So one of the things, Sarah, is that people often worry about was the signs that they had missed, that they could have possibly stepped up and helped with, people that they find have actually stepped in and done and committed suicides. Was there any signs that you think anybody could have picked up on?
So there are two parts to this question. What my experience was at the time, which is I was very sad Okay.
Yeah.
And I was not feeling well. And unfortunately, me not feeling well was not well perceived. It was like in the listening of some people, it was disempowering. No, it's okay. You must go on. It's okay. Yeah, or I felt unheard. Like this was my experience being unheard. And I remember this moment when I was with my mom and I said, I feel, and she was very angry that I'm not feeling okay. And I was telling her constantly that I'm not feeling okay, like a good mom would do, I guess. I mean, I don't guess, I know that my mom is a great mom, but like, of course, no mom, no parent wants to feel that their kid is disempowered. But I remember so clearly having distinguished for myself at that time, Mom, I feel like there's a wound inside of my heart and it's bleeding heavily. And I will continue to express myself. And I need this space until I feel it doesn't hurt anymore. And that's internally how I knew I will be okay. Yeah, so like this was such a powerful moment because I wasn't usually allowed self-expression. Like I would suppress myself so much. So I wasn't giving myself the permission to express myself. That moment, something opened up.
And her anger towards you as well might have also been a frustration that she didn't know what to do to help you as well. So that's what she knew to do, was the anger part.
Yeah.
Well, I'm really,
Totally.
really obviously pleased that you met that lovely career coach
Yeah.
that helped you find that, realize that there is a space and there is a future.
Yeah.
You spoke a little bit about the previous time was when you were a teenager at school. And the depression that you were going through then about being sort of not good enough, the results that you weren't achieving. And you can see that now as a pattern that sort of followed you through into your university years.
Yeah.
How did you get on there? What sort of help did you manage to get there? Did you reach out to people at that time?
Okay, so just because I think I stepped over something I wanted to say, which is I think why coaching is so powerful in that context. See, I said in my previous, like in your previous question, there were two answers to it. So my experience, but also I discovered as a transformational coach, as I was getting coached, because coaching is an experience. And I discovered that deep inside, I had this undeservability block. Like I felt like I didn't deserve love. That was my belief about myself. And when I saw that and I saw it my life experience, like it makes a lot of sense. If I feel deep inside I don't deserve to be loved, it doesn't matter how many people tell me how my parents love me so much, and I'm sure they do. But if I myself don't deserve that, then of course the way it followed me was the normal way that it must have ended up. So that was just like to touch upon the beliefs part, which I believe now as a coach is essential to our life. We must do some work to figure out what do we believe deep inside that is hidden by all the superficial stuff. Yeah. So that was just not to step over something. But then the second question is, yes, it was not the first time that I have suicidal thoughts. So what we identified very clearly is, you and I in our prior conversation, is that it looks like a pattern of that is very specific to high achievers, at least I could speak about that part of my experience. So being a high achiever, I was very outcome driven. And when in my life, I did not get this outcome that I strived for, and I worked so hard for, because that's what one of my life formulas is. I work really hard all the time. And when I don't see that, like the outcome, that I start hating myself for it. I start feeling all of the self-resentment. So it was, I was struck by that when I was coached once, and I discovered I had completely forgotten about this time in high school when I was, I so much was expected out of me, like, because the system is designed so that the best scores, your scores determine your eligibility to the university.
Yeah.
And then of course I had this pressure to, to overperform.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then I just wasn't getting it. Like I was an A student, but I wasn't a star student. And no matter how hard I tried, I wasn't a star student at the time, And it's like going into this wheel, the spinning wheel. It was crazy. It was mind blowing. So, and then I was like, I'm so pressured. I feel so angry. Why is this not working out? And then I had this thoughts, like, what? Why can I just not end my life? It's actually not worth it. Like, no matter what I do, it's just not worth it. And I remember looking out, how can I do it? And I saw Panadol, and I saw that I can overdose on that and I can just die. And I talked to my friend about it. And actually, in both times, I talked to a friend about it. And there was this moment, like this major moment that I could see for myself. If it hadn't been for the role of my friends who have accepted me the way I was, and I was just good enough for them, no matter what I did or didn't do, I was an amazing human being and a really good friend for them, no matter how good at a time I was for them or not. It was the same experience. And then suddenly I looked, and there was this person who accepted me for my flaws.
So and much love and acceptance in those arenas are so powerful, aren't they?
They are essential. They are really essential. And so my bold invitation would be for, if a parent has a child who's going through that, just instead of denying them or having this feeling for you that you're not good enough as a parent, so that your child is now depressed, no, forget about it. It's not going to solve anything. What's really going to make a difference is that you just accept your child, your kid, the way they are, and give them the support that they need. And as we distinguish the word support and help, and the more they feel that love, the more they feel that space that you give them to heal, the more that they will heal. And that's like a promise. So,
and that, it's interesting too to say that just because you go to one therapist or for one part of help, point of place to go, that you don't give up there. If the child or you do not work well in that space, go and find somebody else.
Yeah.
So we in our conversations, we've kind of already sort of said, well, some of the biggest help that you actually got was from coaching, and to be allowed that space to open up and actually talk, connect, and validate yourself and your feelings, and allow that to come out.
Yeah, of course.
That's really great.
Yeah, there is something that is very powerful in this, which is, I tell this to every person I know, because being depressed is seemingly is not an easy experience, but I promise what lies ahead is something that is worth striving to get help for. I promise. Because it's like when I started reading more about that and getting more into it as I healed to understand why did that happen. And it is very well distinguished in psychology. There is a famous book that is called The Road Less Traveled. So what was said in there, I looked at it and I was like, oh my God, I cannot believe this. So when we're depressed, subconsciously, like our subconscious is preparing us for something else. but our conscious is not yet realizing it. Now, the healing journey is to close that gap and to just like submit to a beautiful journey of healing, because your life on the other side will look completely different.
Yeah.
And I was so impressed
Sometimes
to
being
see
that
that
depressive
distinguish.
state, though, you don't always understand that, do you? When you're actually stuck in your depressive state, and
Yeah.
it just seems to be like a really hard job to get to the other side of the depression. It certainly felt like that for me. I could relate a little bit to that when I lost my husband, and for those months that followed, I would go from being able to function to then being like in this stuckness of depression, and it would take everything I had to get me out of it, because I still had my sons to do stuff for, and the dog, and I had things I had to do, and there was times I didn't want to do it, but I made myself do it. But it's only because of the underlining stuff for myself that I've worked through on my own that I thought, well, I don't like this feeling of depression and I want out of it. But I wanted out of it energetically. You could easily see why somebody would think it would be easier to just shut it all off and throw that switch. But,
but wait, before we go, because I think we hadn't answered the question yet, the last question. What I always tell people around me is that if the help that you're seeking is not working for you, just go somewhere else. You know, you deserve that for yourself. So the way I see it is that if you're depressed, if you're mentally not feeling well and not feeling heard with the person who is supporting you, then you change it. Otherwise, you know, you can get stuck for years and nothing happens. Or you can get stuck for years and it gets worse. And you know, what has helped, or what has worked so much for me is that I was very blessed to get empowering help. So empowering help is something that elevates you and not just treats you like as your status quo and says, well, things are the way they are.
It from the inside out so that you can empower yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think you shared with me earlier that what you've discovered was there was years of suppressed anger that was inside of you that had been sort of creating this in your life. Because we were talking about triggers and things like that we have in life, don't we? When something comes up, well, we sort of react to it. Oh, hang on a minute, what am I reacting to? In that moment, you ask that question, you're taking a step back and looking at whatever it is that's come up. And then you can identify what it was. Then you're empowered to do something about it.
Yes, totally. So let me just talk a little bit about that, because see, when I have, and I am an experience, but I'm not the only experience. So as a listener, you gotta do some work to discover it for yourself. So I did some of my education in coaching with Landmark. And in one of their courses, I have discovered for myself, being coached, the way I was surviving life. And I had a really tough way of surviving life. And I would just like look at the person and say, I hate you. But I never actually said it, but it was inside. You know, it's like the way of being that I used to survive life is, I just hate you. I don't belong. I'm going to do it on my own. You're definitely not the person who's going to support me on this. And that's a really suppressive way that doesn't have any self-expression, and that has a lot of anger. And having discovered that for myself, because let me tell you this, it doesn't matter how much information I've read about depression or self-growth or self-confidence or whatever. The thing is, all this anger was in my blind spot. I couldn't see it from myself. And I couldn't understand, you know, why I'm doing things the way I'm doing. And this is the power of coaching, is that you make that available for yourself. You know, you discover what's in your blind spots. And now that is available to you, you get to have a say about it.
Yeah.
So,
And doing it without
looking back.
that you're going to get judged as well. I think that's very important when we're dealing with clients. If you're going to come and feel that you're going to get judged for what you actually share, then why would you even think about coming?
Yeah, of course.
What in that space for you and people like you to sit and talk and be heard.
Yeah, exactly. And I think this is the most important element, to sit in a safe space and be with what's so, and understand what's lying at the back of your blind spot that you cannot see for yourself. It gives you so much power.
I'm loving the analogies that you're coming up with, your blind spots and everything. So, I mean, it comes back to the fact when we were talking earlier that you're not broken, because everybody seems to see themselves with mental health issues anyway as somebody that's been broken. You're not broken. It's just been a few bumps in your road, and you're just looking in the rearview mirror all the time instead of looking ahead. And what we're creating for ourselves.
And you know what? It's so crazy, because I thought all my life, before I have discovered coaching for myself, I thought that I'm actually broken. So there's something wrong in my life. I must do something about it. Whatever I do is not good enough. So I want everyone who's listening to this to just distinguish for themselves that they actually relate, not everyone, obviously, but many of us subconsciously or unconsciously, we go through life so unaware of it that we are broken. And so we we need some fixing, and then we go get ourselves a fix. And that's not true. We're not broken.
That's right.
And the power is, the power is to discover that you're not broken. Absolutely. That's where the power lies. It's exactly out there.
Some of the things that you've touched on there, I can relate those things back to when people are struggling with the emotion of grief, because it's not a very well understood subject. It's not spoken about a lot. And so what we tend to do is that when we don't know how to be in grief and what it's about, we do suppress stuff. We push it down inside of ourselves. We're taught how to gain things in life, but not what to do when we lose them. So when our goals and aspirations are not met in the way that we think they're going to be met, that's when we're doing a number on ourselves. That's when we start to think that we're broken, when actually it's perhaps a different way. We just need to get to whatever we're aiming at. And instead, we'll internalize it. We'll push it down inside. And then it'll start foundations of something else that might just manifest later on as a right angry outburst. When all of these things are coming to light. But I love the phrase that you came out with before, that it was surviving, but now you're thriving. Now you're in a state where you're living your life. And I'm just so very grateful for your time today to come and talk with us about this very difficult subject. And if anybody listening would like some help or support with it, then please do reach out, and we can put you in touch with Sarah, or we can put you in touch with somebody that you might like to speak with. The most important thing is acknowledge yourself, feel what you're feeling, and tell somebody how that is for you. Would you like to say anything before we go?
I love the way you said it at the end, which is, I think, what sharing is all about. You just share your experience, and then suddenly something else opens up besides your experience. So do you know how many times we just go about it and I'm so angry about this, and then 2 seconds later it's not there anymore because you just shared it,
you've let it out. Instead of, don't wear that, it doesn't look good, get it off.
Exactly, get it off.
Shake that off, folks. Let's get going.
This is what I would say. And the last message I really have, because it's a really powerful subject that we're discussing here, and it touches upon so many lives, is that don't just talk to an expert with PhDs and I don't know, tons of certificates, and then just take that for granted if you are unhappy with it. Just let it be. You deserve to get empowering help. That's it. Like, put that somewhere up big for you and just live by it. That's what I think.
Because when we think about unresolved loss, which is what we've talked about, and we know that was the root of your situation.
Yeah.
You know, there was the situation where you were angry at your parents, and there was lots of things going on in your life, which we obviously won't go into detail for you now. But ultimately, if we don't sort of look at that and address it and heal the pain of that loss, then we keep trapped in it. We can't stop moving forward with things that we want to do because we're constantly dragging that with us, almost like an emotional sack that's just coming along with everything and showing up. And some of the, over time, other stuff gets added into that emotional sack, and it just seems to get a lot heavier. So
have
a little chat about that with somebody.
Yeah, and also I think what we oftentimes forget about this is that whatever it is that makes us angry, it's not really something that is, most of the time, it's not right here. It's something from the past. So people go on in life being traumatized about their experiences and their angers. But the problem, or the power of coaching is, and what it makes available, is that you actually have the power to separate from your trauma, so that your trauma, the painful experience that comes out of it, the feeling, the strong emotions, they just sit down and they don't hurt you anymore. They don't impact your life anymore. And that's when you stand in a new space and create something else with your life that is not defined by your anger. It's not defined by your trauma.
What's interesting, Sarah, too, is that you mentioned a few times there about how your heart was bleeding. And I can relate to that, because that pain that I had in my heart when I lost my husband there was no technique in my toolbox at the time to shift that pain. And there's a phrase that we use in the grief recovery, which is, there is no amount of psychoanalyzing that will ever help you when it's your heart that's been broken. And that's where a good coach will get you to be in that space, feel safe and secure in that space, to open up and allow that pain out so that you can let it go and heal it.
Yeah.
Sarah, again, I just want to express my deepest thanks to you today for coming along and having this conversation with me. And I'm sure we'll have plenty more of this sort of thing in the future. Yes. My love to you, and take good care.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really honored, and I'm really honored to be like someone in the space for people and just open up and share about my experience. Thank you so much for having me here.
Sarah, if they would like to get in touch with you, what's the best way?
They could DM me on Facebook or LinkedIn, and maybe you will have the links.
I can add your contact information at the end of the recording. So thanks again. And you take care.
Thank you so much. You too. Bye.